Welcome everyone. Happy Friday. It is Masterclass Friday once again, one of my favorite days of the week. It's a Friday, first of all, so it's hard to go wrong there. And also because I love doing my photography masterclass. So for those of you who are new, my name is Terry White, worldwide photography. I'm going to say photography evangelist for today since that's what I'm doing, but worldwide photography evangelist here at Adobe. My longer title includes design, but I'm just going to focus on photography today. And we're going to kick things off. That's what happens when you're live. We're going to kick things off with a, sorry about this, folks. Last week I had other audio problems. This week I'm having coughing audio problems or just something in my throat. Anyway, with that said, and someone said, you sound good today, because last week I had a piece of equipment that just failed me last week. So I swapped it out this week. I tested this morning. Sure enough, it was the equipment. I swapped it out for a different mixer, and that took away the static that I had last week. So apologies for last week. Yep, I got some water right here. Trust me, I'll be drinking it in just a second. So apologies for last week's start was kind of rough because I didn't know I had an audio problem until the chat started telling me. And of course, I didn't know what the audio problem was at the time. And so I just switched microphones and that did it. All right. So with that said, we're going to kick things off with part 2 of a series I've been doing. I've been alternating back and forth. So for those of you who haven't been joining these last 3 streams, I've been doing this series based on one of Scott Kelby's books. How do I do that in? And last week was Lightroom. This week is Photoshop. Last week was Lightroom Part 2. This week is Photoshop Part 2. Because when I did these initially, I didn't know there were going to be multiple parts. I did how to do this in Lightroom. Ran out of time, didn't cover everything I wanted to cover, so we did a part 2. We did a part 2 last week. And then the week after the first one, I did how do I do that in Photoshop, ran out of time, had more stuff to do. So we're doing that part 2 today. So that's what this is all about. Now, these books are available. I'll put the link in the chat. We gave one away of each in the first parts. I forgot to give one away last week because I was having so many tech problems. I'll try to remember to give one away at the end of the stream this week, or maybe even 2 since I didn't give one away last week. But we'll maybe give away both books because there's how to do this in Lightroom, how do I do that in Lightroom Classic, and this one, how do I do that in Photoshop. And basically what the premise of the book is just all those quick tips, those things that people want to know how to do. So it's like 1 page per tip, a couple hundred, 200 plus tips in each book of what kinds of things people want to know how to do quickly in Photoshop. Because maybe you're a Lightroom user and you never used Photoshop before. Maybe you're a Photoshop user and you don't really use Lightroom that much. And so it's really designed for those quick, I need to know how to, adjust the color of an image. I need to know how to clone out part of an image. I need to know how to do blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of what the books are focused on. So I asked Scott if I could borrow the title. I did. And he said yes. And he said, not only can you borrow the title, you can give away a copy of the book, which is great. And so I'm using my own content though. I'm not like reading the book and saying, okay, do this, read the book, do that. So it's just, I borrowed the title, but I'm going to do my own spin on it. And of course, you can always go in and get the book and see exactly what Scott, and Scott covers way more in the book than I have time for in these even part 2 and part 3. If I were to do a part 3, I still wouldn't even cover half the book. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I definitely recommend getting the books. And before I forget and before I really dive into the content, let's go ahead and post or paste that link for the book. Matter of fact, I'll just put them both in there for you guys. So that way, if you're interested in one or the other, you'll have both links. And we'll just pop those in the chats. It would help if I'm on the right keyboard. There we go. Pop those in the chats. And you guys can check them out if you want. And you don't have to, obviously. And but if you're interested, they're there for you. All right, one more chat to pop it into, and we're good to go. I lied. 2 more chats to pop it into. 1 more chat. All right, now it's in all my chats. Now, speaking of that, I said all my chats because this stream is going out to multiple channels at the same time. But from here on out, I'm only going to be able to pay attention to the one main channel that this is really running on, and that is Adobe Live. So if you are watching this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching this from, great. You can hang out there and keep watching it. But if you want me to see your comment, your question, whatever it is, head over to b.net/Adobe Live, because that's the chat I'm going to be looking at, because I can't look at all of them and still do my demo. Okay, so with that said, let's kick things off and keep going. Let me bring up my list where I left off last week, or 2 weeks ago in this case. And there, no, that's the Lightroom one. There's Photoshop. Okay, how do I do this in Photoshop? And let's quickly get into it. All right, so let's pop over to my desktop. Let's go back to my desktop where I had the book open. And I'm going to go ahead and close the book. And I'm going to just pick a different image to open up here. I'm just going to grab one randomly. Let's grab, let's grab the camera. I'll do the camera. Oh, sorry. Hang on, I forgot they added a button to the library, which means I have to click twice. Okay, I got the camera open on a tripod, and I'm just going to grab a different image too. Let's grab the puppy. Let's open up the puppy, edit, and let's grab one more. Let's grab this guy. All right, yeah, I've used this guy before. All right, this will help me make my point. Okay, so the how do I do that in Photoshop? And this is kind of really one of the things that makes Photoshop different from Lightroom, is that in Lightroom, you're either making a global adjustment to the entire image, or you're using like a selective adjustment, like a brush, or the radial tool or the gradient tool, and that's pretty much it. Like you can't just outline a subject and say, cut it out from the background. You can't do any of that kind of stuff in Lightroom. So that's why we go to Photoshop. So in this case, I've got multiple subjects open here. I've got this camera. I've got this puppy. I've got this guy standing there. He's really happy about it being Friday. And so we've got all these different subjects. And if I need to select them, that's really what Photoshop's all about when it comes to isolating part of an image and working on part of an image. You need to be able to select it. Now there's dozens of ways of selecting images. If not, I won't say hundreds. There's dozens for sure. And there's different methods and different tools because everything's different. Every photo is different. Every scenario is different. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So one of the ways that I used to use all the time, I don't use it nearly as much because there are other tools now, but one of the ways I used to make a selection all the time was the quick select tool. So the quick selection tool has been there for a long time. It's like a brush, so you can make it bigger or smaller with the bracket keys on your keyboard. And you can just start dragging around the image, and it will kind of like, it's like saying, you drag it around the areas of the image, and I will make the selections based on where you drag it. So I'm not going to select the whole thing, and I'm going to select the tripod because you didn't drag it down that far. But notice if I zoom in, that it missed the little strap clip there because I didn't drag up high enough to get that. And if I were to get that, then I want to make sure that my brush is not too big, because if it's too big, then I'll start selecting the background. So I'm just going to make my brush smaller and say, yes, add that in. And I don't have to hold down any keys or anything. It will just automatically add that in. Now, it did get some of the background. It did miss part of the edge here. Let's make sure we get all that. Same thing here with the hot shoe. It did not get all of the hot shoe because I didn't go up that high. And if I just click on those, it will add those in. And same thing here for the top of the dial. It did not get that. So you got to be careful. You got to check to make sure it's getting all the stuff you want that makes up your subject in this case. Now, what do you do in the cases where it got more than you wanted? Like, for example, over here we'll start over here where I started. Over here where it got more of the strap that I didn't want. Well, I could do one of two things. I can use the same tool, just make my brush a lot smaller. And by the way, when I'm making my brush bigger or smaller, and I have to say this, I have to say on a US keyboard, because there are keyboards all around the country, or not country, the world, that don't have all the same keys. And I would say, oh, just use your bracket keys. And people would say, I don't have bracket keys. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have bracket keys? And they would be from some country that doesn't have bracket keys on the keyboard. So on a US keyboard, next to the letter P, you have a left bracket and then a right bracket. Pressing those brackets will make any brush bigger or smaller. So in this case, I made my brush smaller. Now if I hold down my Option or Alt key, I can click to subtract from that selection. And so I can either paint or just keep clicking, and it will say, oh, you must be trying to deselect this white space that you don't want. So that's, and that works across all selection tools, not just the quick selection tool. If you were using the lasso and you held down your Option or your Alt key, it would subtract from the selection instead of adding to it. If you were using your rectangular marquee tool, it would do the same thing. Now, this gets really tricky here because technically, you know, like, I don't know, is that the background? Yeah, I guess that's the background. So you really have to judge too, what do you think is part of the image? Is that the background or top of the camera or top of the hot shoe? So I'm going to say it's the background. And I'm just going to go ahead and subtract that stuff out. And again, this is being, you know, this is the kind of pickiness that some people want because they really don't want it to select things they don't want it to select, or they want it to select things they do want it to select. So you go in and be as picky as you want or as you need to for your object. All right, and again, I'm clicking. You can also paint, but I'm clicking so it will make those quick selections based on where I'm clicking. All right. And it learns. So as you click, it may not be that you clicked all of it, but it knows that, hey, you probably want that whole edge. So I'm going to go and get that whole edge for you. Same thing there. All right. So now that I got that selection made, and again, it's just the camera, not the tripod, or the ball head or the tripod or anything else, then I can do whatever I want to do with just that selection. So I've isolated that part of the image. So if I want to brighten it, if I want to darken it, if I want to paint it a different color, if I want to maybe just take the camera to a different part of the image or duplicate it or whatever, then that is, brackets are important, yes. That is why we make selections. We select parts of the image that we want to do something with. So in this case, I want to select that part of the image and separate it from the tripod because maybe I just want a picture of the camera. I don't need the tripod. So in this case, what I'm going to do is duplicate what I've selected onto its own layer. So I'll just go to my layer menu. And again, I usually do this from the keyboard. It is Command J on Mac, PC Control J, and that will make a new layer. If you look at my layers panel there, it'll make a new layer with just the camera. So the camera's been cut out as good as you did or as bad as you did. It's up to you. So if you miss pieces, they're going to be missing from the selection. If you got too much, it's going to be too much in the selection. So I might not have gotten, now that I'm looking at it, all of the lens right there. And so that's my bad. But anyway, you get the idea. Be careful, check it, make sure you got it all, and then away you go. All right, so now that I got that part selected, then I can take that layer and maybe create a new layer in between them. So let's create a new layer because I don't want it on transparency. And maybe I do want it on a different background. So I've got gray as my background color now. I can hit Option Delete, and that will give me a gray background for my camera. And now I can put my text or anything I want below that without the tripod. So again, we make selections to do things like this all day long. And that's why we make selections, is to isolate things, to select things, to move them to a new layer, to move them to a different document, so forth and so on. Yep, reverb mic, there's 100 ways to do just about everything. So yep, you could also drag it down to the new layer icon and that will give you a new layer too. And if I were to cover all the ways of just making a new layer, that would pretty much take up the hour. So forgive me if I don't cover your favorite way. All right, so let's go on, because that means you already know how to do it, and I don't need to cover your way. So let's go on and let's talk about doing more. So now that I've got this isolated, I've got these 3 layers. I've got the original layer at the bottom, which is now turned off, and you wouldn't see it anyway because it's underneath the gray. I've got the gray and I've got the camera itself. Now, the camera means that since it's on its own layer, it can be moved around. So I can move it around, put it wherever I want, and I'm not taking away from anything else. So if I need it more centered like that, I can move it and make it more centered. I can also resize it. So if I hit Command T on the Mac, PC, Control T, that gives me free transform, and then I can free transform to make it bigger, smaller, whatever I want. And by the way, just a couple quick tips. Whenever you grab one of the handles, you're scaling from the opposite corner. It's like the corner's pinned down and you're making it bigger or smaller from the opposite corner where you're dragging from. But if you want to do it from the center out, so let me escape out of that. Let me hit Command T one more time. If you want to do it from the center, because maybe you want to just make it bigger right where it is or smaller right where it is without having to move it again, then hold down your Option or Alt key, and that will make it bigger from the center or smaller from the center. Now, we no longer have to hold down the Shift key by default unless you changed your preference. If you changed your preference, then you have to hold down the Shift key by default. All right, that's that. So that's making a selection. Now, let's go back to my other objects here. What if I wanted to make a selection of this furry animal here? Well, I could do the same thing, but it gets into just because you found a tool to use doesn't mean it's the right tool for every job. So we started with a quick select tool. Can I do it with the quick select tool? Sure. It's going to take me longer, and what's worse is it doesn't know what fur is. So that's going to be a very hard edge selection. If I were to get it all, let's make sure we get all the limbs here. Make sure we get the front of the paw. I'm getting some of the background there, but let's just for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and make that onto its own layer. And then turn that layer off. Look at my edges. My edges look very jagged. They look very cut out, very amateurish. They look like they were cut out with a pair of scissors. And so just because I can use quick select doesn't mean, oh, sorry, wrong key, doesn't mean quick select is the right tool for every job. So in this case, that's the wrong tool for this job. Whenever there's hair or fur involved, I like to let Photoshop do the selection and then refine that selection with its tools. So for example, what I could do here is I could say, I could use the quick select and then refine it. So I could do it that way too. But let's go into select and let's do select subject. Because select subject says, I'll automatically select it for you, but I'll do it in a better way. So I'll automatically select that for you. And even if I were to, let's look at this one. Even if I were to do it that way so far, it still looks like it's hard edge. So that's still not what I want because we're missing one part of it. So let's go into select subject one more time. That did the same thing, but notice it did it quicker and it did a better job. It didn't select that background in the middle, and it did it with one click. It got everything. It got what I needed. Now let's go in and make it better. You notice that when you have a selection, there's also something called select and mask. And when you go into select and mask, what that is designed to do is allow you to refine the edge of your selection so that, here, let me zoom in so you can see it. So in these areas where it looks like it was cut out with a pair of scissors, you can actually go in and refine that edge to get that nice fur, hair, whatever it is you're trying to select, that nice edge that you want. So I'm using a brush that's too big, obviously, but you get the idea. Let me undo that last one. Make my brush smaller. There we go. And the refined edge brush is automatically selected for you when you go into this. It's the second tool over here on the left-hand side. So that way you can get your hairy, furry people, animals to look better against whatever you're about to put them on by cutting them out or doing it this way. Now, select subject has also been, the algorithms behind it, the machine learning behind it have been given more human examples so that when you do this with a person, it should do a much better job without you having to even do any brushing or very little brushing compared to what we used to have to do over the past 4 or 5 years. All right, and so you would quickly, I'm not going to go all the way around it very carefully, but you would quickly go all the way around it, make sure that you got all the edges the way you want, and we're going to do a couple more edge things before we say we're done. And that will give you a much better selection for your subject. Now you can look at this on different ways too. You can look at it on a black and white mask. So you can see the mask that you just made. You can actually see the hair that you're brushing to make sure it is nice and furry the way you want. You can also, I usually do this, decontaminate colors, especially if I'm selecting something that has a harsh color around it, like green. Like green screen is very harsh and it reflects onto your subject. So when you decontaminate colors, what you're telling it to do is to remove that reflection from the edges as well. In this case, I probably don't need it because it was, a dog kind of bouncing around on grass. And again, something that was out of focus anyway, so it's probably okay. But if you did need it, you could do it. Now, you also have other tools that, you have like a brush, more a traditional brush for removing, for removing any spillage that you might have done. Like over here, I did some spillage that I may not want it to do. So you have a regular brush to get in and do that too, and I can go smaller with the brush and get into those edges and just kind of really clean that one spot up. All right, but anyway, once you get it the way you want it, and again, there are all kinds of features in here like Smart Radius that will also assist you on keeping the hard edges hard and the soft edges soft. There are all kinds of techniques to make your selection just about as perfect as it can be. But once you're done, at the very bottom here, you're going to choose to output this to a new layer, more importantly, with a mask. Because if you do it with a mask, then you'll always be able to go back and fix anything that you missed the first time. So if I click OK, that'll give me my new layer with a mask. And then you're probably saying, well, that's on transparent. How do we really know what that looks like? And let's give it something else to be on. So let's go find a different background. All right, well, the sky would probably be okay. This will probably work. Let's drag it in here. So I'm just dragging a different image into the background. There we go. So we have our puppy. Oh, hang on, undo. Hold down my Option key to do it from the center. There we go. There we go. And now we have our puppy leaping into a forest. And it's the wrong color, and it's the wrong time of day, and it's everything, but you get the idea. And again, we can go in and now really check to see what that furry selection looks like, and it looks pretty good from here. All right, there's all kinds of other tonal things I would now do because it's just, the puppy's too bright for this background, so we'd have to start toning it down to make it look more realistic. But this was mainly just to show you what the cutout would look like and what you could achieve there. All right, let's go into this one. So far I've shown you manual ways to make a selection, the Adobe Sensei powered select subject, and then refining that subject with selected mask. But what if I don't even want to do any of that? I just want it to do it for me. Just do it. Don't make me work for it. Well, there is if you go to your properties panel, and we bring on the properties panel, and we're on this layer, and we unlock that layer. You'll notice that there is a remove background. Now, you don't always have to unlock the layer. The reason I had to unlock the layer in this case, which let me undo that and show you what I did. Notice the background has a lock on it. So I unlocked the background just by clicking on it. The only reason I had to do that, it's not a requirement for this feature. It's a requirement in this case because I grabbed this from the library. So it's still linked to that library item unless I do that. So now when I unlock the background, you'll notice that I get a remove background button. And that remove background button is really doing two things. It's doing a select subject and it's masking the background for you. So it's like a one click, the Photoshop team thought, why should you do this in 2 steps when we can make a button for it? You just do it in one. So it's on the properties panel. It's called remove background because that's what people think of. They just want to remove the background. They click one time And there it is, done. All it did was do a select subject and then click mask. That's all it did. So the background's still there. It's hidden under this mask. And if I hold down the Option key or Alt key, you can see it. Hold down my Shift key and click, you can see the original background is still there. Now, in the case where it missed something, I'm going to show you what it missed. It's very subtle. It looks like it got it all. It looks like it did a great job. But there's one little thing it didn't do right. If we zoom down here, the strap coming off his backpack got accidentally removed. Now, I wouldn't care. It was like the strap's a distraction anyway. But if I needed that, let's say that strap was important, it had a logo on it, it was part of the story, then in that case, I really need that strap back. So what I could do is go to the mask, go to my brush tool, and I could go into, I'm in white paint. Let's make sure you're in white. We hit the letter D for our default colors. And we make our brush smaller. I'm going to turn on that mask one more time just so I can see where it is. There it is. Okay, good. I just kind of know where to start painting. And we can bring that back in. Now again, I got to be careful because I'm bringing in more. And I should probably use a hard edge brush because that strap has got a hard edge to it. So let's undo that. Let's switch my brush to a hard edge brush. Hardness 100. And then, let's start over here. And again, I'm using a brush that's probably too big for this, but you get the idea. Now that I've got it all in there, I was like, okay, now I can see the strap. Now I can go ahead and paint out the background that I don't need. So I switch colors. I go from white to black. And now I could go in and just start painting out. Oh, sorry, I'm on a mode. Let's go to normal. There we go. And start painting out. And I'm going to use a smaller brush. And use my tablet. And painting out the pieces I don't need. Now, you could avoid all this if you just check. If you're making your own selection, check it first. But in this case, we didn't really have that choice because we used the feature in the Properties panel, the Sensei-powered feature. But it'd take you a few seconds to paint that in just right and get the strap back. I'm kind of rushing it here, but you get the idea. All right, and my strap is back. And so now we zoom out and we have our perfect cutout that we can now put on any other background that we need. So just like we did before, find a background we want. Maybe the Australian background, put it underneath. Underneath, there we go. And there he is in Australia. And definitely make sure you check for limbs like thumbs and fingers. It looks like his thumb's missing. No, it's there. Okay, just make sure you're not cutting out part of the person's arm, leg, whatever. The strap wasn't that big of a deal, but missing a finger that really wasn't missing would be a big deal. So now we've got that one on its own background. We still have the mask. We can always come back and do more, but you get the idea. And also we just want to check up here. Make sure, yeah, see, parts of his face are missing. See, I can see that now that it's on its own background. So once again, we go back to white, and we just come out with a brush, and we just make sure that we get all of his eye, all of his head, and just paint that, all of whatever that is. Is that an ear? Yeah, that's an ear. And then also there's some parts here that we don't need, like this. From sticking up from the jacket, unless he's wearing a white shirt, which I don't think he was. So just check your work, in other words. Make sure you got it all. Make sure that it's all there at the end of the day, and pieces that you don't want, you go ahead and take out. Pieces that you do want, you go ahead and bring back. And that's the whole beauty of having that mask, to always bring back the parts that it may have gotten or missed by mistake. Missing big chunks of his ears. I don't know if that's just the way the photo looked. No, that's his ear. That's all of it. This part may be off. Oop, wrong color. Undo. No, that's his ear. See, that's all background. That's just the weird way his ear looked at that angle. So it's all there, and plus a little too much background. But that's one of if you thought it was missing, you should definitely go check to make sure it's not. And you could check it just like I did. You could either go check the mask with it off, holding down the shift key to make sure you're not missing part of the ear, or just paint and see if it's there or not. That's it. Okay, let's move on. Next thing. All right. We did that. We did that. We did that. We did that. We did a lot of the stuff in all of these operations. So we masked part of a layer. We scaled. We show hide layers. We did all that. All right. Let's get into some graphic design type functions that again people want to do all the time. So I'm going to close some of these up. Actually, I might use this one. I'll use this one since it's here. It'd be easier than starting from scratch. All right, so we got this image that we kind of started. We have this, again, 3-layer concept here. So this is where we started. Then we put that by itself. Then we put that behind it. So we have those 2 layers that we want. Now, if I want to go in and start adding some elements to this, as maybe I'm making a poster, maybe I'm making a photography poster, probably camera poster, something like that. Then what I might want to do is I might want to draw attention to something with a line or an arrow or a shape or something like that. So you have shape tools inside of Photoshop down here. Mine are down here at the bottom. Yours may be in a different area because my tool panel is custom. But you have a line tool, you have a rectangle tool, you have an ellipse tool, polygon, and a custom shape tool. If you grab the line tool and you just drag it out, it's going to draw a line. But and it's going to be in whatever you made last. So I made it with no fill, but I made it red, and I don't think I put anything on the ends of it. But there's some things I want to point out. So let me undo that. Let me point out some things first before we start making the line. So let's zoom in over here. First and foremost, your type. You can make it a shape, a path, or pixels. I highly recommend if you're trying to draw it as a graphic element that you make it as a shape, because that will create its own layer. That'll let you always come back in and do something else to it. It'll basically make it like a vector graphic. If you make it a path, that's like a tracing path. It may not give you what you want. If you make it with pixels, then you're going to be less flexible on what you can do with it after the fact. So if you wanted to change your mind and change something about it, a pixel layer is a whole lot less flexible than a shape layer. So make it a shape when you're drawing any one of these kind of shapes here. Then you have the fill and the stroke. Well, the fill is what it's filled with, if it's filled with a particular color, and the stroke is the outline. Well, with a line, I don't really, unless I'm going to make it super thick, I really probably don't need a stroke a fill for it. The stroke will be enough. Then you have the type of line that it's going to be and the thickness of that line. You have the width and the height. And again, that would be more into the thickness of it. And more importantly, where I'm trying to get to here is you also have at the very, almost to the right of the options here, you have the option to have arrowheads at the beginning, end, or both. And then you can control the size of those. So for example, if I draw a line and then I deselect it, I just have a red line. That's basically what I drew. Notice it made a new line layer. And that's why I said make it a shape, because then you'll always be able to control it. It won't be part of the background. It won't be pixels. It will be a vector shape that you can always go back into it and do more with it. So now that I've got this shape, and by the way we select a shape, we don't select it with the move tool. You can move it around with that, but if you want to select it to do something with it, you actually have to use the direct selection tool. So the direct selection tool lets me select it and then do more with it as an individual shape. So for example, I can go into that, I added a point, sorry. No. Hang on, I'm grabbing the wrong point here. Oh, I still keep doing that thing. Don't show me that again. No. All right. But anyway, I was trying to reshape it, but I'm not grabbing the right point here. There we go. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. So I just made a selection around it to reshape it. And because it's a vector shape, I can do that. I can also go in and I should be able to control the thickness of it. That may not be something I can do after the fact. Hang on a minute. That should let me work. That should let me do it. Let me try one more thing here. RGB. I want red. I want that. I want that. And I want, hold on. I don't want that. Okay. Let me try one more time with a different one. It's not letting me change my size, even though it should. There we go. All right, I just had to change it from whatever type it was to whatever type of what I just changed it to. So now I can change the thickness of it. Let me go back to this one. I should be able to do that now. Oh, different layer. Go back to this one. And now if I change the line type to this, then I should be able to make it thicker now. There we go. So I can make it thicker. And I should also be able to go in now and change it to that's the thickness I want. That's the color I want. I am missing my, oh, because it's that tight. Never mind. Let me do one more. Let's put the arrowheads on the end. And then make it thicker. And make these thicker. Let's try 40 pixels. I'm not getting the arrows I want. That way, it's something about adding them after the fact. So set your, if you want to make sure you do it the first time, not like what I was just doing, set your options first and then draw the path. It's a lot easier than trying to go back retroactively and fix it. Let me try one more time. All right, got rid of all those layers. I got my path set here. I have my arrows set. I have my color set. And now if I were to go in and draw it, that's going to give me my arrows. And then I can go in and make that path thicker if I want to, or maybe not. Hang on. There we go. Make it thicker if I want. So now I've got this vector shape that has got arrowheads on both ends to point out whatever it is I want to point out. I probably wouldn't need an arrow that thick, but I have the option if I choose to. Don't want to do it that way. Undo. All right. I need some remedial arrow training. Anyway, you get the idea. You can make arrows, lines, and other graphic shapes. So let's go into some of the other shapes. You've got your rectangle. And again, it's taking on the same properties of whatever you had last. See, that's what I was expecting it to do with the line, but for whatever reason, it won't let me interactively do it with the line unless it's that line path first. Same thing with the ellipse. And one of the tools that was removed from this most recent version of Photoshop, there used to be another shape. It was the rounded rectangle tool. The reason that that shape was removed is because you no longer need it. If you were to go in on the right layer, you were to go in on the rectangle, undo, delete. If you were to go in with a rectangle, when you draw it, you notice you get handles just on the inside of it. It'll let you change an individual corner. So if you're trying to make a design where you need part of it to be rounded, part of it to still be square, you can achieve that with the rectangle tool with the handles and holding down your Option or your Alt key. And again, these are all shapes and shape layers, so they should be easy to go in and reshape or reselect or redo anything you want to do to. All right, so that is just my quick thing of working with lines. Wasn't so quick with lines, but also working with shapes, and also the change in this most recent version with the rounded rectangle tool. All right, next up, let's pop over to a different background here. I guess we'll use this one. Oh, I didn't buy that one yet. Hang on, let's use this one. Okay, actually, hang on, sorry. Trying to find something with a little less dramatic sky. Something like that. So you're out on your big vacation, your big day, and you're taking your photos, and Mother Nature just didn't cooperate with you. You didn't get a great sky. You got a great scene, but not a great sky. So one of the things that was added to Photoshop is the ability to change your sky. But a lot of questions come up from that, like how do I add my own skies in? Do I have to use the ones that come with it? Can I use the ones that come with it? So forth and so on. So if you were to want to have a more flattering sky than this one, you can go into your edit menu. You can come down to sky replacement. And the last sky you used will be what it chooses to use. And what I'm always amazed by is that in most cases, it does an amazing job masking that would be a pain in the you-know-what to do this manually. Think about what it just had to do just by coming up and picking the default sky that I used last. It had to mask out all the railing here, all the little individual spots here. It had to figure out what the sky was to make the selection and then replace it. Now, once you bring this up, you don't have to use that sky. You can use whatever sky you want. Now, the categories that come with Photoshop are blue skies, spectacular, and sunsets. Notice there's a fourth category called Terry. Those are my skies. So if you just want to play around with the Adobe skies, you can, of course, just click on those, and it will show you what those would look like. Now, this bright blue middle of the day might not be the right sky for this, because just looking at the tonal values of this, it looks like it was later in the day. So that's one of my tips right off the bat, is if you're going to use a sky replacement, you should probably pick a sky that is at least around the same time of day, so that it looks more realistic. So if I were to pick something like that, that looks more realistic, because if you look at the tones in the sky and you look at the tones of the Ferris wheel, then you kind of look like, oh yeah, that was probably around that time of day. And you can, of course, have some very dramatic skies. And if you pick something that's a little more toned down, that could work too. It could have been just a cloudy or foggy day, maybe not as late. But if you pick something that looks just super unrealistic, it might look super unrealistic. So just be mindful of the sky you're picking for the scene you're about to put it on. Now, back to the tip. So I have these skies here that I've added in. We kind of saw one of the gray ones earlier. Let's click on one of these. That looks kind of cool, but again, it's kind of a sepia tone sky against a color image. So you would really be doing that on purpose. And then just a standard blue sky. Now, if you go down to the bottom here, you can go in. You can create your own new folder. So I created one called Terry. And then once you're in that folder, you can add your own skies just by clicking the plus sign. So now when you're out and about and you see a beautiful sky, go ahead and photograph it because you never know when you might need it later. So if I click the plus sign, I can go and find skies. I have a folder called skies somewhere, TW skies, there it is. And I can pick from the different skies that I've added to this. These are some of the ones I've added. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, I kind of like that one. Let's add that one in. And now if I click on that one, I get that sky for this scene. So it's easy to add your own skies. Unfortunately, today it's one by one. So I have to click the plus sign again, add the next one, so forth and so on. Hopefully they will change that soon to where you can select multiple skies or a whole folder at one time. And it is also, the skies you're picking are from your operating system, like a folder on your hard drive. It's not from Lightroom or from Creative Cloud libraries or anything like that. You'd have to export them out first, put them in yes, my sky is a JPEG, put them in a folder as JPEGs, and then bring them into this. And once you bring them in here, they're here for the duration. So you don't ever have to bring it in again. It'll just be located in whatever folder you added it to. Why should you bring in your own skies? Because A, we're going to know these after a while. Everyone's going to start using these. We're going to know, oh, you use that one in the blue skies. Wink, wink. We know which one that is. Secondly, is that these are while you can use these royalty free, if you're a photographer and you're taking your own images and you add an Adobe sky, like one from the program, not yours, then the question someone asked me, and it was a good question, well, does that make the image yours? And technically, no, because you're using part of an image from another photographer. Someone else took that sky. So at least if you added your own skies in, at least the whole image is yours. It's not partly yours. The foreground's yours, but the sky belongs to somebody else, even if they let you use it. So that's another reason why you should. Resolution, high. Like, because again, think about your camera. If you're shooting 48 megapixel images and you want to replace the sky, well, you should probably be using 48 megapixel skies too. You can use a lower resolution. It will still work. I'm sure that this particular resolution, which I remember from a much older shoot years ago, it's probably not the same resolution as my newer camera. It will still work, but you might see a quality difference between the sky and your foreground. So resolution should be at least as high as what you're shooting. If you're shooting a 24 megapixel image, then you should probably be using 24 megapixel skies. Can you add multiple skies at once and place them into a group? You can't add multiple skies at once. You can add multiple skies. So, or wait, let me make sure I understand the question. In sky replacement, can you add multiple skies at once and place them into a group? No. You can, so let me show you what happens. Once I click OK, it places that whole thing that it just did, the mask, the sky, everything it just did, as a new group called Sky Replacement Group. Now, I can turn that group off, and I can go back to my original image because it's all non-destructive, and I could do another sky replacement with a different sky. So let's do that. So let's go sky replacement one more time. Let's, again, it always remembers the last one you just used. Let's pick a different one. So I'll pick the gray sky this time. All right, so now we click OK, and now we'll make another new group. Now, if you wanted to consolidate those groups together, that's on you after that. It doesn't do it automatically. So you can merge those two groups together in some creative way to kind of get a mixture of skies, but you're doing it manually. So you can do as many sky replacements as you want. You can turn them on and off. You can go in and then from there combine them by dragging, or let's say I turn them both on. So now they're both on, and maybe I use a blending mode on the one on the top to kind of like do something crazy like that. Yeah, you can put it together yourself, but it's not going to do it for you. So there's an overlay between the two skies. Vivid light kind of looks interesting. I'd probably put another adjustment on top of that to tone it down a bit so it's not so bright. But sure, you can experiment with multiple skies. It just doesn't do it all at once. Sky replacement is fun. I agree, Christine. This sky replacement tool, can you? You can, you can add. Okay, so let me see what you're saying here. In sky replacement. Sorry, not in the background. There we go. Oh, you're saying that gear. Hang on. I have not noticed that gear. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So, wait, hang on, hold on. Let's do it one more time. Skies. Okay, so what you're referring to as this gear is that if you were to export out multiple skies and import them in, yes, you can import them in as multiple skies that way, but you can't just say, here's a folder of my skies, bring them all in at once, is what I was referring to. But yeah, if someone shared their skies with you as a sky preset, then yes, you can import the whole preset in of multiple skies. So just a difference in what we're talking about. But yes, you absolutely can do it that way. All right, let's close this and move on. Got a couple minutes left. Oh, let's go, actually, you know what? That sky is a perfect, actually, no, let's use a different one. Let's use this one. Edit. So first and foremost, and I really want to show the original to that. Hold on, let's go to Lightroom. Let's go in and develop demo. Let's see if I have the original to that one. I don't know that I'm going to find it fast enough, but let's go ahead and actually we could do. There it is. I will bring one of these. Okay. I brought this particular one up on purpose. I wanted to bring up the one that had not been touched, had not been edited at all. This is the way it came out of the camera back around 2009. So if I go in, I can obviously I can quickly go in and do a sky replacement like we did before, but I'm not sure that I would do it just yet because I haven't really toned the rest of the image yet. So let's go in and tone the rest of the image, and you can do this a couple different ways. I'm just gonna, I would advise converting the smart filters first, because that way you can always go back in and undo it or redo it if you want to. Now that we've converted for smart filters that made it into a smart object, we can go into our filter menu one more time and come down to the camera raw filter. And what this how-to is how to quickly adjust an image non-destructively, just like we would in Lightroom, but I'm in Photoshop. So you have the camera raw filter that you can use on any layer. So for example, I can go into my basic panel and I can choose auto, and that will quickly auto adjust the image based on what it thinks, but it's still got a long way to go. So for example, maybe I want to increase my texture, maybe I want to increase my vibrance, maybe I want to bring down my shadows a bit, bring down my exposure a bit. Maybe I want to increase the clarity while I'm at it to kind of also adjust those midtones, add a little dehaze to it. And it's really starting to bring that image out. I can even go in with my adjustment brush and I can start painting in, like for example, I could paint in, not exposure, but let's paint in vibrance or saturation even. Let's paint in some saturation. There we go. And I could just kind of like really adjust this image to my heart's content and make it look the way I want it to look really quickly. Okay, so now when I click OK, that's been applied as a smart object or a smart filter, and I can always go in, turn it off, or double click on it to get right back to those settings. So now that I've toned it, this would make for a better sky replacement because I'd be able to go in and quickly adjust it that way. But I'm out of time. You saw sky replacement. I will come back maybe another day and we'll do a part 3 of this and we'll continue on. So with that said, everybody, I want to thank you for joining me. I'm out of time. Cheers, everyone. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye, everybody.